Okay, so we're going to create a turntable in Autodesk Maya 2014. The school has finally gotten it for us, so I'm just going to go down here to the Start menu, and I'm going to type in Maya, and there it is, Maya 2014. I'm going to go ahead and launch it. I'm going to maximize my view, and then I'm going to go about the business of creating a turntable animation. So how many of you guys are familiar with this part of the frame here in Maya? What is that? And the range slider. Okay, so the time slider is basically all the ticks in your animation, all the available frames. And the range slider kind of allows you to isolate portions of the time slider by moving it around and so on and so forth. Okay, and then we have over here, we have the play controls. So the very basic is just play. If I hit the escape key, that'll stop it. If I click on here, one of the things I want to do right away is I'm going to just right click on the timeline here, and under playback speed, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to real time. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's going to make Maya render everything as it actually plays out, if it were a video sequence rather than kind of the hyper-threaded, too fast animation that I'll demonstrate here in a second. All right, so if I'm ever going to set up a turntable, the first thing I want to do is I just want to start with something simple and just get everything working the way I want it to. And so I'm going to go completely lame with this, and I'm just going to start with a cube. All right, I'm going to hold down the X key to temporarily enable snap to grid. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I want to snap my box right there on the origin so that it's perfectly centered in my world. All right, then I'm going to hit the F key to frame up my box, and I'm going to hit the 5 key to shade it. All right, and now what I want to do is, if I'm going to make a turntable, this is my model. There's a number of ways you can do turntables. The most basic way is to actually just select the model itself and rotate it and set some keys on it and spin it around in 360 degrees. I'm not really a fan of that one, and I don't really have to show you that either because it's so basic that anyone can do it. So I'm going to show you another method. This method, we're actually going to take the camera and fly it around the object. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go over to the Create tab, and I believe Create doesn't matter which module you're in. You can be in animation, polygons, it doesn't matter. I'm going to stay in animation because that's what I'm about to do. And then I'm going to say Create, and I want to create a camera. So there's a number of cameras that are available to you guys inside of Maya. The first is just a basic camera. That's kind of the standard one. The perspective view is just a regular old camera. And then the second one is a camera and aim. Okay? A camera and aim is a camera, and then it's kind of got a point that the camera is constrained to, which is an interest that the camera always follows. All right? And then we have a third one, which is called a camera aim and up. That one's a little complicated, and we're really not going to use that one in this class unless one of you guys can produce a shot that absolutely requires it, and then I'll show you how to use it. But otherwise, we're going to leave that one alone. Pretty much everything we're going to do in this class is going to be accomplishable by using a standard camera or a camera and aim. All right? So I'm going to show you those first two and the differences between them. So I'm just going to go ahead and say cameras, camera. It's going to create a new camera. If I go to wireframe, we can see there's my camera. Over here, the camera is selected, so this camera has a name. It's called camera 1. All right. If I hit the T key whenever I have a camera selected, it's going to give me access to these two controls. There's a transform for the camera, and then there's a transform for the camera's interest. So the camera's interest is essentially just what that camera is looking at. So if you'll notice, I move the interest and the camera is kind of pointing and following it. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and do this a couple different ways. All right. So what I want to do is I want my camera to always look at my subject here, which is my box. So I'm going to do something real fast. I'm going to select my box here, and I'm going to go to Display, Transform Display, and I'm going to say Local Rotation Axis. And what that's going to do is it's going to show my center point for my object, and it's going to allow me to snap to it. Okay? Because what I want to do is I want to select this camera, and I want to grab its interest, and I want to snap it to the center point of that box so that my camera's interest is always looking dead center at my subject, which is the box. So I'm going to hold down the V key, which is going to temporarily enable snap to vertex. And I'm going to snap that right to the center of that box. And now I'm going to move my camera around. And if I want to see what my camera is looking at, I actually have to change my viewport here from what is currently the perspective view to another view. So what I like to do when I start working with cameras, this is kind of my setup, is I'll always change this panel over here to regular old perspective view. And then I'm going to change my other panel over here to my new camera. So that's camera 1. And then what I typically do is it's tempting to move this camera around using the regular old camera controls. And you can do that, but only right now because I have a very simplified camera in here. And in the next few passes here, I'm going to do a little bit more involved rigs, and that's going to stop working. So what I want you guys to do is get in the habit of using your perspective view over here to move and manipulate your camera in the 3D view rather than using your camera controls, using your mouse and keyboard. All right. So I'm just going to frame this one. Whoops. I'm just going to shade this one, and I'm probably going to do it myself because I don't work with cameras all the time, so I'm probably going to screw up my own methodology. Okay, so I got my camera here, and I'm looking at it in my perspective view. I want to use this view to control all of this camera's movements without manipulating in this view. All right. If I wanted to, I've got this annoying interest here. I could turn that off by going to display, selecting my box, going to display, transform display, and turning off my local rotation axes again. Just so you guys know, that's a toggle. So I'm going to turn it back on though because I'm going to keep using it. So transform display, local rotation axis. And now what I'm going to do is I want to create a path. So you could take this camera and just start setting a bunch of keys in a circle around your box. I really don't recommend that though because that's going to end up with some really herky animation and you're not going to like it. So what I do recommend though, yeah, it's going to be ridiculous, is going into create. So I'm going to say create nerves primitives, and I'm going to do a circle. All right, and I'm going to wireframe this just for a second. I'm going to hit the X key to snap to that origin again so that my circle is created right there at the origin, and I'm going to make it about that size. Okay, so I got a circle, and this circle is basically going to be used as a path for my camera. All right, so the way we do path animation in Maya, and I'll probably get it wrong the first time because I never know which way. I think it's path, then camera. So I'm going to select the path, then camera, and I'm in animation. I'm going to go to animate, and then I want to go to motion paths, and I'm going to say attach to motion path. And I actually got it right the first time. And so what happened there was I selected my path and my camera, and I told the software that I want that camera to flow along that path. And so I didn't change any of the settings, and so by default it just set the camera's animation for what the timeline was set to, which is 48 frames. Okay, so if I play this back right now, I first of all don't have a very good angle, so I'm going to go ahead and play this back, make this my active view, play it back. And there it is. My camera's just spinning around my box. What do you guys think of that composition? It's freaking awesome, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. No, it sucks. So the way we're going to fix it is very simple. Once your camera is attached to a motion path, all you have to do is select the motion path, and you can move it up. All right?
That's cool.
And so now if I play that back again, we got a little bit better composition. Not too interesting because it's kind of dead center, but at least it's eye height and it's in frame. Okay. Now I can also show you that now if I hit the T key again to get to the camera controls. Let's see here. T key, W. You'll notice that I no longer have my interests anymore. What's up with that? No, I didn't turn it off. But what happened was when the very act of me attaching this camera to a motion path negates the original setup of this camera. So it kind of destroyed the interest. All right. So that's a bit of a problem. All right. So I'm going to show you a few ways you can fix that. So I lost my interest. Well, that sucks because now the only way for me to change my camera's angle is to go in here and rotate it, and you can see that that's not working too well. All right. It's kind of blowing up and it's no good anymore. So I'm going to show you how to fix this. There's two ways. The first way is to say, oh shit, that camera isn't going to work for that motion path because it basically just destroyed it when I attached it. So let me try another camera. So I'm going to go ahead and create a camera and aim. All right, so camera and aim is a little bit better for path animation because this aim that it has is kind of hard-coded for good, all right? And so I can take the aim here, and I'm going to just put it off to the side for a second. And I'm going to select this camera, and I'm going to select the path. I'm going to do the exact same thing I did with the last camera. So I select the camera, then the path. I'm going to go into the animation menu set. I'm going to say animate. And then I'm going to say motion path, attach to motion path. What happened? Path then camera. See, I told you I get it wrong. All right, so path then camera, and I'm going to say animate, motion pass, attach. No, what's it doing? Is it saying the path already has a connection? Hold on one second. Okay, so I found the problem. What it was a toggle. It was an option inside of the attach to motion path, which is called follow, which is really not good. It's not a good option unless you're doing like a chase scene or something. And we'll get into that deeper as we go in here. So what I did in order to get that to work was I'm just going to delete this again. And I'm going to make a new one. So I'm going to create a camera and aim. And then I'm going to move my camera out a little bit. I don't have to move this, by the way. I just do. And I'm going to select my camera, then my path, and I'm going to say animate, motion path, attach to motion path. This time I'm going to open up the dialog so I can show you what I needed to do to make this work. And if I reset this, by default what happens is they have this setting here, follow, set, toggle. And what that's going to do is it's going to make the camera's interest follow the path directly as if it's perpendicular to that path. In this case, I don't want that because my camera is actually, parallel. My camera is going to be perpendicular to the path's movement. And so I have to turn follow off. When I turn follow off and I say apply, boom, suddenly it works. And hold on, I will pause. So now that I have my camera attached to my path, it's now called camera 3 because I've created 3 of these in the effort of getting this done. So I'm going to go over here into my panels and I'm going to say camera 3. All right, now if I want to change what the camera is looking at, what do I need to do? Just move the path, right? All right, cool. Now this is awesome because my interest is staying locked, put, as before my interest got blown away and then the camera was just traveling with the path. So this is basically an advantage now. And we have this little point here, and this is basically just an aim constraint for the camera to always look at this point. And if I want this point to be constrained to my subject, all I have to do is select it, hold down the V key for snap to vertex, and I'm going to snap to the center of that box. And so by doing that, what I'm going to do now is if I move my path, check it out, I can change my angle, I can go high angle, I can go low angle. And if I go ahead and play this back, there we've got my camera animation. And the beauty of this one is now that wherever I move, the path, the camera's going to follow with it. All right. What's wrong with this? What would you guys say? Is this a good turntable? Even though, disregard the subject, right? A stupid box. Too fast, right? Okay.
Box is too perfect.
Yeah, the box is just way too perfect. Need a little imperfection. No.
1 inch.
All right, Peanut Gallery, settle down. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the animation. All right, so what do you guys think is a good time frame for a turntable?
60 seconds.
What? That's way too long.
40, 30 seconds.
I'm going to say anywhere between 5 and 10 seconds. So if your model's super detailed, you might want to go 10 seconds. If the model is not very detailed, or no. If the model's not very detailed and you want to hide some of your imperfections or whatever, you want to do about 5 seconds, okay? So by default, Maya is set up to a 24 frames per second cycle. And I can confirm that by clicking over here. I'm going to open up the preferences. And I'm going to go into my animation settings. Where is it? Settings. And there it is right there. Settings, general, application preferences, time, film, 24 FPS. All right. This is what we want to use for the entire duration of this class, 24 frames per second. Reason for that is because that is what film is rendered at. Not anymore, actually. Film's rendered now with 3D and all this new stuff. It's rendered at anywhere from 60 FPS to, they're going to like 120. But in the olden days, film was 24 frames per second, and then TV is 30 frames per second. So why would we go 24 FPS instead of 30 FPS? Less frames to render, yeah. So that's why we're going to go with 24, all right? So 24 frames per second. If I want to make this turntable 5 seconds long, how do I do that? I can just do the math, right? So I don't do math in my head. So I'm going to open up the calculator, and I'm going to say 24 times 5 equals 120. So I need to increase my time range to 120. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to type 120. And then I want to increase my range slider also to 120. And then I'm going to make sure that my range slider is expanded so that it encompasses the entire range there. So from 0 to 120, all right? I have two options here in terms of tweaking my animation. I can either tweak the motion path to extend the number of frames, or I can just make a new one, all right? So I want to show you both ways. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this panel down here into a graph editor. And the graph editor is where you go if you ever want to change motion keys on an object. So I have a motion key set on my camera, so I'm going to select my camera. I'm going to come in here to the graph editor. I just hit the F key, and the F key is going to frame all the motion that's on that camera. And currently all there is just a path animation. Okay? So I can come in here to my graph, and I can extend this to the right to 120 frames. And all I'm doing is holding down the Shift key, which, if I'm right, that's making it snap to the timeline. And I just extended my path animation from 1 frame to 120 frames. Does everyone understand that? Okay, the poor man's way would be, if I didn't want to mess with the graph editor, I could just delete this camera, make a new camera, reattach it with the settings of 120, okay? All right, so let's play that back. Let's see how that's looking. We're going to play that back. So we got 120. What do you guys think? It's all right, right? All right, so let's just say we're happy with that. What else is wrong with this animation right now? Yeah, it's like slowing down at the beginning and the end, and then there's kind of like a little bit of a herc, like an overlay, right? And the reason for that is very simple. I'm going to go back to the motion path, so I'm going to select, whenever you want to get to the motion path of any object, you're always going to select the object, and then I open up the graph editor and just hit the F key, and that's going to frame all the animation keys on that object. So in this case, this is the path animation for my 360-degree turntable around the object. And what is up with the shape of that? Does anyone know what that's called, where it kind of attenuates?
S-motion.
Yeah, it's S-motion, but what's the term for the beginning and the end here? I'll give you a hint. Ease. It's ease in and ease out. So what's happening here is I have a turntable motion, and I have ease in and ease out on that motion. And as a result, it's kind of making it, if I want it to loop perfectly, and so a loop is where it'll just keep spinning in infinity and look right, that ease in and ease out is disrupting that flow, okay? So if I want this thing to loop in infinity and have the viewer have no idea that it just keeps looping, and I've only rendered 120 frames instead of 6,000 or whatever it would be if this thing plays back for a couple hours. The way I'm going to do that is I'm just going to select the motion path, right-click, and I'm going to go to tangents, and I want to change it from what it currently is, which is it's probably auto, I'm not sure which, but I want to change it to linear. And what linear is going to do is it's going to make that motion be one steady movement from beginning to end, and it's no longer going to have the ease in and ease out. Okay? So now when I play this animation back again, the ease in and ease out is completely gone. It still looks a little stupid because it's just a box. But I want to keep it ridiculously simple so that we can get through all this stuff before we do something hard. Okay, so there's one more thing going on, and let's see if anyone can see. Is there anything else wrong with this animation?
The camera's showing.
Oh, that's good. The camera's showing. But just in terms of the actual motion path, can anyone see anything? All right, I'll help you guys. It's hard to tell in this playback, but what's happening is right now as it stands, if I go to the motion path and select the camera, the beginning frame, so frame 1 and frame 120 are identical. And so what's happening is if frame 1 and frame 120 are identical, what's happening during playback?
It's going to play the same frame.
There'll be a little glitch because at that intersection there's going to be 2 frames, and you're going to get a little bit of a hurt depending on the playback on the monitor. In this case, the graphics card isn't that accurate, so it's probably dropping that frame and we can't really see it. All right, so if we don't want that to happen, what do we need to do? We have several options. We can move the key, beginning or end, doesn't matter, 1 frame to the left or right. We can also just go down here into the range slider and just go from, instead of from frame 1, I just changed the range slider to play from frame 2. That would do it. All of these are valid options in order to fix it. What I typically do is the way I just did it. When I go to render this thing for a play blast, I will actually just change the playback instead of being from frame 1 to frame 120. You can change it to frame 2 to frame 120. Or you can also, this is another standard, where you can select the keyframe and you can take the first frame and move it to frame 0. And then when you play back from frame 1, your first frame is on frame 0, which never gets played, and then your final frame, and now they no longer overlap. So I think this is typically how I do it, is this method. I'll take the first frame and just move it back to frame 0. Done. Now the thing spins to infinity. There's no hiccup. And I can play this for an hour with 120 frames, and no one would know, be any wiser, that I was fooling them all. Okay? Cool. All right, now let's do one more thing. So we have a few options in terms of how we can play back a playblast. The way that you guys have probably all done it in your animation classes is you simply just right-click on here on the timeline, and you say play blast. I'm going to open it up so we can see there's a whole bunch of options. And you can come in here and say play blast, and you can do format, either AVI or QuickTime. And then you can dial up the quality. I usually just take it all the way up to 100. Display size from window. I'm going to leave this all the same. And then I'm going to say play blast. And what's this going to do?
Play blast.
Yeah, play blast. But it's basically just going to make a little Windows movie that plays that video back. And I don't know why it's herking out. But you can see here, I'm glad this is happening. So I'm trying to play this thing back, and I'm already getting all sorts of problems. And the reason for that is because the video codecs that come out of Maya when you use the play blast and play blast the video are a little herky and messed up. They're not very good. And it's not a good idea to render out your video as a video sequence anyway, or as a QuickTime movie. Because as we start rendering and I start adding lighting to this and a more complicated object, each one of these frames, there's 120 of them, it's probably going to take something like 5 to 10 minutes to render per frame, right? So what happens if I'm rendering this turntable and I get to frame 50 or frame 109, let's just say, 109 of a 120 frame animation, and I'm rendering this thing out as a QuickTime movie or an AVI, and the computer crashes? What happens? I lost my entire video. Okay? Now, I'm going to introduce you to another way to do this. What if you render out all these frames as individual images, so just JPEGs, and you get to 109 of a 120 sequence, and the computer crashes? What happens then? You're going to pick back up at 109, right? Do 109 to 120, and you're done. And so in production, for film and animation, this is how all films are rendered, as frames, for that very reason. Because if you ended up with a dropped frame, which happens all the time, or a bad frame, all you have to do is go back and render that frame. And something that would have taken a day is only going to take 10 minutes. Okay? And all your healthy frames are right there in your basket. Think of them as little eggs. You want to put all your eggs in your egg basket. All right? So I want to show you how to do this thing again. This time I'm going to render it as frames. All right? But the first thing I want to do is I need to set up my project, because if I render this right now as it stands, Maya is going to send these frames into no man's land. All right. So what I want to do here is I'm going to take this, still working with my box. I'm going to come over here to File, and I'm going to say Set Project. And I'm going to come over to the desktop, and I want to make a new folder. I'm going to call this My Video Project. This directory structure that I'm setting up right now is going to be the baseline for this entire class. Okay? So I'm creating a directory at the very top called My Video Project. Okay? I'm going to go into that folder. Inside of that folder, I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this one Maya. So I'm going to do Maya. Okay? And then I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this one Video. All right? What I want to do is I want to set the Maya folder as my project folder for Maya. So I'm going to do that right now. Select Maya, and I'm going to say Set. Okay? This location, blah, 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 does not contain a project definition workspace. Yes, I want to create one. So I'm going to say Create Default Workspace. Now what I want to do is I want to go out to that folder, and I want to see what it looks like. So I'm going to go in here to my Windows Explorer. I'm going to go into the Animation Project. I'm going to go into the Maya folder. I'm going to go into the scenes. And, whoops, I just picked the wrong folder. I want the one I just made, which is My Video Project. There we go. So My Video Project, I'm going to go into the Maya folder, and I want to see what's there. All that's there is my workspace that I just created. But what it's missing is all of the directories that Maya uses to store stuff, like textures, assets, animation, etc. And I know in modeling I didn't have you guys use the project structure. And the reason for that was because in modeling it's so simple, there's nothing for us to be sourcing other than maybe some texture maps. So now when we're doing a much more detailed project with all sorts of external files, we want to start using Maya's CAN directory structure. So these directories are missing, so I need to create them. So I'm going to come back into Maya, and I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to the project window. So I'm going to open up the project window, and I'm going to come over here under Location, and I'm sorry, Current Project, it's got Maya. The location, it's giving me the path to that, and I'm going to say Accept. I'm going to accept all these default directories and their structure, and the moment I do that, if I go back to my folder, boom, it's going to create them all. Okay? So you definitely have to do this. If you don't do that, these directories will not get created. All right, now this is the magic little directory for us moving forward in this class. This is the Images directory. That's where Maya stores all the images that are related to any renders while the project is set to the current project. So if you remember, I went to File and I said Set Project, and I set it to Maya. And so now if I render out of here, where are my images going to go? Inside of the Images directory, inside of that folder. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play blast my video one more time, and I want to show you how to do it as an image sequence using the hardware renderer. Okay? So again, I'm going to come down here to the timeline. I'm right-clicking on the timeline. I'm going to go to Play Blast. I want to open the settings. I'm going to say Format. This time I'm going to change it to Image instead of AVI. And what that's going to do is tell Maya that I want to do it as an image sequence. And then encoding, I want to use JPEGs because they're very friendly. They're very small and they're very friendly. So I'm going to say JPEG. And then display size, I'm going to say from render settings. What do you think that's going to do? It's going to use the render settings. So if I open up the render settings, whatever I have the render settings set to for size, that's what this thing's going to render them at. So what I want to do is I want to change my presets here from what is currently HD 540 to HD 720. So I'm going to change that to HD 720, and HD 720 is 1280 by 720. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and close that guy off. And so I have it display size from render settings. So what size is this video going to be when I render it out? 1280 by 720. It's going to be still images. They're going to be in JPEG format. And then the only thing I need to change here is the scale. So if I do the scale here at 0.5, what do you think is going to happen to my images?
It's going to be very small.
They're going to be half the size of
the actual scale.
Exactly. So I want to change this to 100% scale. Frame padding, that's just how many zeros it's going to add before the number of the image. I always want to set that to 4. That's a good number. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and also click on Save to File. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to write these images to a folder on my computer. So I'm clicking on Save to File, and then it's asking me for a name. So I'm going to call this one Turntable _box _01. And then what I always do when I'm doing this from the Play Blast window is I always add an extra underscore, and that's because Maya won't do it either way if I don't do that. And what I would end up with would be a 01, and then all my frames would be 01, 001, 0100. So I add an extra underscore there so that there's a break there between the actual frame padded numbers and the file name. Okay? And then I'm going to finally click on Browse, and I'm going to tell Maya where I want those images stored. So I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm going to go into My Video Project, into the Maya folder, into the Images folder, and I'm going to create a new folder in there, and I'm going to call this Box Turntable. Okay? And this is where I want to store my images. So I'm going to call it Box Turntable _01, again, underscore. All right? And I'm going to say Save. I know this is a lot, but I promise you this is going to save you time if you just get this thing set up correctly from the get-go. All right, so now I have this completely set up correctly. And now, I hope I do anyway. If I say Play Blast, I'm going to let it go. And if I've done everything right, it's going to open my animation back up in F-check. How many of you guys know what F-check is?
Frame check.
Probably 0, right? I'll explain it here in a sec. So before F-check loads all my frames, I want to just go to that folder where I'm storing my images, which is right here, Images, Box Turntable. And I just want to check visual confirmation that all my frames are there. All right, awesome. They're all there. They have the name I gave them, and they're all in the correct position. This kicks ass. Okay, awesome. I'm going to come back here to F-check. So, and I'm going to just close it because I want to explain what F-check is. So if you just had a bunch of images in an image sequence, how would you guys play those back as a video? Any ideas?
In After Effects?
Yeah, you could do it in After Effects. You could do it in Premiere. I think you could do it in QuickTime Pro. But Maya gives you a little convenient application, which is called F-check. So I'm going to come over here to the Start menu.
And that's just for like preview, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to open up F-check. And the reason why I want to use F-check is because it's very easy to use. And it's going to go very fast. So you don't have to open up Premiere or After Effects and have this big RAM hog running while you're just trying to preview your animation. So I'm going to launch F-check. And then I'm going to go into File, and I'm going to say Open Animation. And then I'm going to go into the desktop, and I'm going to navigate to where I just stored those images. I'm going to go to Animation, or I'm sorry, My Video Project, Maya, Images, Box Turntable. And then all I have to do is click on one of those images, and then say Open, and F-check will open up. And what it's doing here is it's kind of loading all the images individually. So this might take a little while. So right now we're at frame 12. It's got to load all 120 frames. And then once it does, then it's going to play back in real time. So a little bit of waiting, but I'm here to tell you that it beats having Premiere always open or After Effects always open. It's kind of a pain in the butt. I'm going to pause the video so we don't have to wait through the... Any question? I know that was a lot of information. All right, so now what I want you guys to do is pick a model of yours, and I want you guys to create a turntable. Okay. So first pass is you're just going to do the hardware turntable. Awesome, some of you guys already done it. Okay. The only reason that's happening is the driver's card. So if you software vendor that'll all go away. Yeah, it's just it's glitches from the hardware vendor. So it's you have to. You try this. Is this your camera right here? Yeah. Change this to high quality printer. It may also crash your computer. Try that, see if that gets working. You guys want me to do it again slow?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, I apologize. The trade-off is either I don't give you a video, or you endure a few lectures like that where I just race through it and you get a video. Maybe we should take a vote. What do you guys want? Do you want videos or do you want?
Just in case.
Okay.
If you go slow and if you miss something that I had nothing to play about.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, we got some time, so I'm going to do it again slow. All right. So I'm going to do this now with the tank, and I'm just going to pretend like I didn't do anything. Oh, I can't close this. I got to open a new Maya. All right, so where do you guys want me to start up at? Very beginning? Okay. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is get a subject. So I'm going to open up that tank that I was using. And okay, so we have a subject. Once we have the subject, it's a good idea to just make sure that your subject is centered with respect to the origin, because it makes life easier. So what I'm going to do is I've grouped this object, and I'm going to go into Modify, Center Pivot, to just make sure that pivot is centered on the object. And then I'm going to move the object by holding down the X key. I'm going to move it until I snap it to the origin. And I might have to go to wireframe to confirm that I've done that. Yes, I have. Okay. And now that I know, I really am just trying to center my subject with respect to the world. Once I've done that, I'm going to move it up so that it's up on the ground plane. Okay. And now we want to do some camera animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to go out to the top view, top orthographic. And we're going to create a NURBS primitive. The reason we're using a NURBS primitive for a circle is because there's no such thing as a polygon circle. So I'm going to go to Create, NURBS primitive, and then I'm going to grab a circle. Okay. I'm going to hold down my X key because I want to make sure that this thing is centered with respect to the origin as well. And then size-wise, I don't really know how big to make it, so I'm just going to make it much bigger than my tank. Cool. Are we all with it or no? Okay. Okay. So now that we have our circle, that's our path for our camera. Now we need to create a camera. So I showed you guys previously that the regular old camera didn't quite work for this because it lost the aim. And so in this case, we actually want to use a camera and aim. So I'm going to go to Create, Cameras, Camera and Aim. And I'm going to say OK, and it went ahead and made that. I don't know why I always move it, I just do. You don't have to. Okay, so I got my camera and aim created. If I want to attach this camera to this path, what do I have to do? Yeah, I got to select the camera, then the path. I want to be in the animation menu set. And then I want to go to the animate drop down. All right, and then I'm going to go to motion paths. And I'm going to select attach to motion path. Now remember, I discovered something new, and I think that, I'm not sure if it's me or if in 2014 they made that flow toggled automatically. I don't think it was like that previously because I don't remember having this problem, but I also could be wrong. So I want to go ahead and open up the settings. So I'm going to say attach to motion path, and I want to make sure that follow is unchecked. Okay? Once I've done that, range, I'm just going to use the time slider because, well, maybe I don't want to do it this way. You could use it as a time slider if you had it set up correctly, which I do not currently. So this would be a good example of where I might just use a start and end. And that's basically me kind of overriding what's in the timeline and telling the software, okay, I want it to start at frame 1 and I want it to end at frame 120. Okay? And that's going to give me 5 seconds of animation, which anything between 5 and 10 is going to be reasonable. I'm open to, you know, arguments for longer or shorter. Basically, when it comes down to camera animation, it either works or it doesn't, is my philosophy. So I always like to see people try new things, and if it works, it's cool. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. It's no big deal. All right, so start time is 1, end time is 120. I'm going to say apply. Yeah, 1 and 120. Okay, and then I know that my camera has been attached to the motion path because it'll jump from wherever it was over to some position on the path. All right, and then if I want to see what my camera is looking at, what do I need to do? change the view, right? Over here under panels, perspective, I'm going to change this to camera 1, and now I can see what my cameras see. Is that a good shot? No, that's shitty. Okay, if I want to improve my composition, what do I have to do? Okay, so I'm going to select the path, and I'm going to move it, and like magic, it's basically moving my camera. And then I'm going to select that camera's interest. Bless you. I'm going to make a layer from my tank here. That's weird. Go over here to panels, and then where it says perspective, select your camera. In my case, it's camera 1. And then I'm trying to make a layer here. I don't know what the hell is wrong with this thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to change the interest, the camera's interest. And I'm just going to hold down the X key, and I'm going to just make it so that it snaps to the origin, which if you remember, I centered my tank on the origin, so that I know if I snap my camera's interest to the origin, then it's going to be centered on my tank. And then now I'm going to move the interest a little bit to get a little bit better composition. Maybe I'll give my tank a little bit of headroom. Okay, now, is that a great first shot? So if I want to change the composition, what's the easiest way for me to do that? All right, I'm going to select the path, and I'm going to rotate it. Okay, cool, until I find something interesting. Just going to do kind of a generic 3/4 there. Okay, so I got my tank here on my turntable, and now I want to render out some still frames, all right? So the first thing I want to do is change my time frame, my range and time slider to 120, so I'm going to set the range to 120. And then, there we go, we got the whole thing. All right, now we want to set up our play blast settings. And I want to do that using the render globals. All right, so right here, this is the render options. I'm going to open that guy up. So render settings. Under the common tab, I want to make sure that my resolution is set correctly, and that's done under image size. So image size. And then under the presets, I want to select which one? Who can help me? HD 720. Okay. And that's 1280 by 720. That's kind of the generic standard HD format right now. The better one is 1920 by 1080. Ooh. But I don't want to kill you guys on render time. So that's why we use the 720p instead of 1080p. Okay, so it's HD 720. And once we have that set up, then we can right-click down here on the timeline and go to the Play Blast settings. And this box right here, if you have view checked, all that means is it's going to open it in whatever program. So if I were rendering this out as a QuickTime movie or a Windows video file, that means it would just open it up in Movie Player or QuickTime Player. So if I uncheck view, if it's a series of images, image sequence, that means it's going to try to open it in F-check. So if you don't want to view it after you've rendered it, once you get the hang of it, you probably don't want to anymore. You're going to untoggle view so that it doesn't keep opening it. And then you can also turn off show ornaments. And ornaments are basically just these little things here, like the origin icons and any cameras you might have in here. It will not hide things like your motion path, because your motion path is actually a piece of geometry. If you want to hide your motion path, you actually have to select the path and then make a layer for it and hide it. Whoops. That's weird. Oh, this thing's messed up. Make a layer for it and hide it. Okay? All right, the next one down is format. You want to select what? Image, okay. And then encoding, I kind of like JPEGs for this because we're not really to the final render stage on this project, so JPEGs are going to work really well for us. So I'm going to say JPEGs. If you're going to do any compositing, though, as we get deeper into the course, you're going to want to use a format that has an alpha channel, which I really like TIFFs. You can use TIFFs or PNGs. It's a preference. I like TIFFs. I know the ins and outs of TIFFs. PNGs annoy me. Although they're good, they annoy me because some programs don't read them correctly. So I'm going to use encoding JPEG. Display size. What do we want to use here?
Render.
From render settings, right? Okay, cool. And what does that mean, from render settings? What's that going to do? It's going to grab the size of the image from what I just typed in over there, which was what? 720, which is 1280 by 720. All right, so that's 720p. Scale, what do I want to put in here? Why do I want to put 1 and not 0.5? Yeah, all right, so I'm going to use 1. Frame padding, what does that do? Adds leading zeros in front of the frame number. So a good number for that is always 4. And then I leave on remove temporary files, and that's just going to remove any files that Maya makes in making your video. And then you always want to click on save to file because that's going to allow you to give this thing a custom path. All right. So when save to file is turned on, you're going to type in you're going to first click on browse. You're going to navigate to the directory where you want to store your images. In my case, it's Animation Project 1, Maya Images. Actually, that's not the one I want. In my case, it is My Video Project, Maya Images. And I'll make a new folder, and I'm going to call this one tank _ turntable _2. Okay. And then I'm going to call this under file name tank turntable _2. Okay, cool. In this case, if you're going to render out of the Play Blast, it doesn't give you the advanced naming options like the software renderer does, where I can tell it to put an underscore before. So in this case, I have to manually add that. So I always do. So underscore. And then file type, I'm going to do JPEG. And say save. Cool. And now our Play Blast is completely set up. So I can say Play Blast. What Maya is doing right now is it's actually playing each frame of your video and screen grabbing a frame from each frame. It's a very imperfect way that it's actually doing this. And so even though I untoggled view, it still tried to open an F-check. That's just that's Maya being Maya, so I'm going to close that. Now that I have my images, if I want to check to see if they're there, I always go into Windows Explorer and I look for my folder I just created, which is Turntable 02. I'm going to check that folder to make sure all my frames are there. I always want to check, is frame 1 to frame 120 there? Cool, visual confirmation. It did what I said. Awesome. Okay. Now my images are there. Now what's next? Premiere, right? I want to bake these down to a QuickTime movie. So I'm going to open up Premiere. And can I open 2 Premieres?
Yes, you can.
And let me just save this one. I'm going to do it from the very beginning. Okay. All right, so I want to launch Premiere. I'm going to go to Start, typing in Premiere. I'm going to launch Premiere Pro CC, Creative Cloud. Okay. This little box comes up, and you always want to say, if you're starting a new project, you want to say New Project. If you already have a project, you can just click on here, Open Project. In this case, I'm going to make a new one, so I'm going to click on Create New. And then name-wise, I can call it whatever I want. I'll just call this Video Project number 2. And then under Location, you want to tell it where you're going to store this file. So I'm going to browse and make sure I'm putting it in the correct directory. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I want to use my video project. Video, because this is a Premiere project file. So I want to store it in my video folder. And then I'm ready to rock now. You can just leave these all at default. Say OK. It's going to open up a blank Premiere project. There's nothing in it right now. So it's just a project without a sequence. And the way you want to think of a sequence is, if you guys are familiar with After Effects, a sequence is very similar to a composition. Isn't that what it's called? Yeah. So in order to now start bringing stuff in, I need to make a sequence. So I'm going to go to Sequence. Oh, wait. File, New, Sequence. You can also hit Control-N. And then I just like to use the preset because they got one made and it's perfect for us. So I'm going to go down here to HDV. And then under HDV, I'm going to use HDV 720p 24. It's perfect. You want to name your sequence. So type in here like Turntable 02. Say OK. Cool. Now I've got a sequence. I need something to play back in that sequence. First thing I always lay down inside of my sequence is some black. So I'm just going to right click here in the bin, and I'm going to say New Item, and I want to say Black Video. And again, the reason for the black video is to just give your player some lead time to get its shit straight. All right? Because if you don't put that black video in and it starts from immediately your story, what'll happen is there'll be some sort of hiccup, and people will miss like the first couple seconds of your video. So I always want to lead the video in with 5 seconds of black. So I'm going to come down here to the timeline and set my time slider to 5 seconds. And then I'm just going to grab this and trim it. Okay, now I can import my animation. So I'm going to right click and say, I think this works either way. You can either say import or new item sequence. I'm going to try it as new item sequence. No, I'm wrong. It's import, so I'm going to right click and say import. And then I'm going to go to that new one which I just rendered, which is Tank Turntable 02. Just click on the first image, you don't have to select them all. And then make sure that you have this box toggled right here, image sequence. It's amazing how many people forget to do that. They'll say, Joel, why is it only one frame? Why isn't my animation playing back? And then I'll say, because you didn't click image sequence. And then they'll say, no, I did. And then I'll make them do it, and then they realize, no, they didn't. So just make sure that you always have that ticked. Say open. Okay, cool. And now I'm going to drag that in. I'm using A-B style editing. So there's two video tracks, track A, track B. And we're going to alternate the clips above and below moving forward. If I want to make this thing loop, what do I need to do? I think you can even do this easier. I'm just going to select the clip here in my timeline. I'm going to hit Control-C and then hit Control-V. Oops. If you hold down the Shift key, it'll snap to the end of your next clip, and then you can just hit Control-V. Control-V. Control-C. There we go. And I can just keep pasting it. All right, is everyone caught up? Yeah, if you guys are seeing like kind of a blurriness in the playback in Premiere, that's really what Premiere is doing in order to be able to play this in real time, is it's dumbing down the quality. And so what you see in here is not an accurate representation of what your final video is going to be, okay? It's just kind of like a crappy preview. Okay. Oh, shit. Oh, okay. The final stage of this is to output your video as a QuickTime movie. So I'm going to open up my previous project. So if I want to open a previously saved project, it's very easy. Just open Premiere, say Open Project, navigate to your video folder. So it's My Video Project Video. Boom, there it is. My Video Project 01, I think is the one I'm looking for. Nope, I'm wrong. Unless, hold on, it takes a little bit sometime. Wasn't that one? There we go. Okay, so I open up my project. Now if you want to render this out, start the video back. Okay, if you want to render this thing out from Premiere, all you have to do is go to File, Export, Media, and it opens up this box here. All right, so format, bless you. Format I always want you guys to use in this class for final output renders is going to be QuickTime. And then I think, yeah, there is. It's awesome. There's a preset here called HD720p 24 H.264. So that's exactly the codec we want to use. I'm going to select that. down here under output name, this is where you name your movie, but it's also where it's going to store it. So it doesn't show you the path here, but if you click on this guy, it'll open up the file browser, and this is where you now navigate to where you want to put it. So you always want to make sure that this thing's being stored someplace where you know where it's going. So for me, that's going to be my video project. And then I'm going to always put my rendered videos in my video folder. And I'm just going to call it whatever I want. So in this case, it's box turntable 01 underscore dot move. Or I'm sorry, box 01, box turntable 01 dot move. All right. Cool. And then usually you can just go with the defaults because this preset's pretty good. And now all I have to do is say export. And if I'm lucky, I did everything right. The other reason why I like to use QuickTime is because the playback controls in QuickTime are very friendly. You can very friendly frame by frame, stop, start with the space bar. If you guys have ever used Windows Media Player, it's like Control P to pause and looping, and it's crappy, yeah. And so when we're doing feedback in class, I like to use QuickTime because it's really fast and I can frame by frame. And so please use QuickTime. If not, I'll try to open your Windows Media inside of QuickTime. Okay, so now I need to navigate to where I stored that video. So I'm going to go to my video folder. There it is, box turntable 01. Awesome. I'm going to open it up. Of course, it's going to open in Windows Media Player after I just said that. So if I want it to open in QuickTime, I actually have to right-click on it and say Open with QuickTime Player. And there we go. So please forgive the crappiness of this initial demo. The purpose of this exercise is to get us all on the same page with respect to getting our just introduction to cameras and then getting our projects set up correctly. So that moving forward, we're going to continue to tweak and refine pretty much everything. And that's it. So for today, I just want you guys all to turn in your rendered out turntable of your object. This is kind of an in-class exercise, so you want to turn that into the homework folder. And then next week, you're going to bring with you your storyboard, your one sheet with your models that you're going to build for your story, and then a list of all the models that you're going to build for your story. Yes?
Could you explain the one sheet from here one more time, please?
Yes. The question is, can you explain a one sheet? A one sheet is just it's a fancy name for a collage.
So just like
it's just
from the internet and just
yeah, an 8x11 image in Photoshop, and then you drag in all pictures of all the different models, elements that you're gonna use as inspiration or reference for modeling your object.
And a list of stuff that you got.
And the list of things you're actually gonna model for your story.
Okay.
Yeah.